So we have come together in Seattle because we're at the front door of the Gates Foundation here. Our locally based group, AGRA-Watch, was founded in 2007 by CAGJ because we learned that the Gates Foundation was putting millions of dollars into a so-called new green revolution, which means that they're pushing chemically based agriculture and GMOs onto Africa. And it means much more than that, which you'll learn more about tonight. But AGRA-Watch aims to stand in solidarity with the African food movements who are fighting for food sovereignty, who are resisting this huge push of industrial agriculture. And the summit represents several years of relationship building with people on the continent and with people in the US who are committed to fighting for food sovereignty. In the words of sort of the founding declaration of Nyaleni, which was a gathering in Mali in 2007, it is the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food, produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agriculture systems. We're really so very honored that leaders from several African organizations have traveled so far to help us develop strategies to help make us more effective. We're building a more effective campaign together through this summit. And tonight, it really is a rare opportunity to hear directly from some of the most powerful and important social movement leaders from Africa.
And we're very happy that family farmers and people who work with family farmers have come all the way over from the continent of Africa to engage us in a conversation about the Green Revolution and about the Gates Foundation and their project for a new green revolution in Africa called AGRA, which I'm sure many of you are already familiar with, because what we've heard about the Green Revolution is that it saved 1 billion people from hunger. Well, that's probably true. What we have not heard about the Green Revolution, and this is something that Food First, the organization that I work for, discovered 40 years ago, was that the Green Revolution also drove about 1 billion people into the ranks of the hungry. And who were these people? These were farmers. Basically, the proposal of the Green Revolution is to transfer the industrial model of production from the global north to the global south. Why? Because the global north had saturated its markets. We could no longer sell any more pesticides or hybrid seeds or fertilizers to our farmers because we'd already sold everything we could. And so we had a crisis of accumulation, and we had to break down the food systems and the agricultural systems in the global south so they would buy these products. So the first thing that happened, of course, was that those who could afford those products bought them. There was a tremendous flush of food. It brought down the price of grains, and it drove the small farmers out of business. And when it did that, they were the ones who went hungry. So the Green Revolution, during its heyday, reduced hunger by about 11 or 12%. Hunger increased by 11 or 12% during that period. But we don't hear about that. Poor Africa, we must have forgotten about it. They missed the benefits of the Green Revolution. And so now we must bring them the Green Revolution. And that's what AGRA is all about. It's bringing the Green Revolution to Africa because somehow Africa was missed. Well, why was Africa missed? Was it actually missed? The answer is, of course, no, not at all. The Center for International Agricultural Research, CGIR, which is a consortium of all the international agricultural research centers around the world, funded by the Rockefeller and Ford Foundations and our tax dollars, basically tried for 20 years to get the Green Revolution going in Africa. They spent 1/3 of their budget for over 20 years trying to kickstart the Green Revolution in Africa, and they couldn't do it. So it wasn't that Africa was bypassed by the Green Revolution, it failed. About 6 years ago, the Gates Foundation and Yara Company, which is a international fertilizer company, got together and decided, we've really got to kickstart the Green Revolution in Africa again. And the rationale for all of this was, of course, not we need to sell our products in Africa. The rationale was we need to feed the world. Poor Africa. It missed the Green Revolution, and the poor Africans are starving. And we need to feed them. And you still hear this. You hear this time and time again from USAID, from the World Bank, from Bill Gates, we need to increase food productivity by 100%, or by 70% by 2050, or the world is going to starve. We need to feed the world. Who is this we? Do you know who feeds the world today? 70% of the world's food comes from peasant farmers. Actually, less than 15% of the world's food crosses any borders at all. Do you know who the hungriest people in the world today are? They are peasant farmers. So on one hand, they feed the world. On the other hand, they're the hungriest. And do you know who they are? They're mostly women. So women feed the world, and women are the ones who are going the most hungry. And yet somehow we have to feed the world. So what this really is about, you see, is about market share. But you can't say that. It's about those who have 15% of the market share of the world's food and who want the rest of it. And so the rationale for this is that we have to feed the world. And to do that, we have to bring them the Green Revolution. This is all about food security for the world. And our guests tonight aren't going to be talking much about food security. They're going to be talking about food sovereignty. And I'm not going to sit here and tell you what the difference between food security and food sovereignty is. You can already sort of guess where things are going. But I will tell you what one urban farmer in Oakland told me one day. An underserved community in Oakland, this African-American farmer, feeding his community, said, when I asked him, well, what do you think the difference between food security and food sovereignty is? He said, dude, I can be food secure in jail. So we are talking about freedom, the freedom to feed ourselves. And we have an extraordinary panel tonight. First, I'd like to introduce Million Belay from the Alliance for Food Sovereignty in Africa and from MELCA, Ethiopia. He's the founder and director of MELCA. It's an indigenous NGO working on issues of agroecology, intergenerational learning, advocacy, and livelihood improvement of local and indigenous peoples. He also coordinates the Alliance for Food Sovereignty for Africa, and that's a network of networks in Africa. He's been working over 2 decades on the issues of intergenerational learning and biocultural diversity, sustainable agriculture, the right of local communities to seed and food sovereignty, and in forest issues. He has a PhD in environmental learning, a master's degree in tourism and conservation, and a bachelor's in biology.
What comes to your mind when you think about Africa? In terms of analysis, we don't differ that much with foundations like Gates Foundation. There is population increase in Africa. We have to feed the increasing number of people. We have a problem of land degradation. We have urbanization. Urbanization is a new and rising problem in Africa because it's taking over farmlands, and increasing number of youths are migrating to urban areas. So there are farmlands which do not have farmers, and feeding habit of people is changing. And to compound that all, we have climate change, which is not our own doing. We have also this image problem. You know, when people think about Africa, they think about a hungry continent, a dirty continent, a disease-ridden continent, HIV, now Ebola, a continent ravaged by war and coup d'etats. So, to solve all these problems that I've mentioned, there are 2 visions, 2 contrasting visions. One vision, we call it a productivist vision. It's a vision of AGRA. What is this vision about? to answer the problems that I have outlined. They say that, yeah, this is a very easy problem to feed African population, the growing number of African population. We have to produce hybrid seed. Now, the winning narrative is also we have to use modern biotechnology, basically genetic engineering, to produce hybrid seeds, highly performing seeds to feed Africa. We have to pump the soils with agrochemicals, and we have to use irrigation. And since African knowledge, the knowledge of the people, is backward, we have to substitute it with new forms of knowledge and new forms of agriculture. So that is their vision. And we all know what this vision has brought to this world. There is an increase in greenhouse gases. It's a nitrogen-based agriculture. And nitrogen is much more powerful than carbon dioxide to affect climate change. We have pollution of rivers, pollution of other water bodies, pollution of soil, pollution of air. And this whole system operates through control. Control of seed, control of market, the control of any agricultural inputs. And there is a decrease in biodiversity. It's a monoculture. And where it happened, there is a displacement of the people. It impoverishes people. There is plenty of food probably coming out of the system, but the food is nutritionally impoverished, nutritionally poor. So that's the result of this kind of vision. So what kind of vision are we proposing? As an alliance for food sovereignty in Africa, working in 50 countries out of 54 countries in Africa, working with over 20 networks. For example, to tell you the extent of the membership of AFSA, we have Pelham Regional. Pelham Regional works in 10 African countries. One of the members works in Kenya, Pelham, Kenya. They have 43 organizations that they work with them and 2,100,000 members. One single entity. And if you multiply that with all the number of networks and members that we have, we are working with over 40 million, 50 million African communities. We have groups working solely with women. We have groups working with indigenous people. We have groups working with farmers and civil society organizations. So we have started collecting cases to make the case for agroecology. Let me tell you two short stories. One story is about this rice intensification. This system of rice intensification, it was started in Madagascar, then it went to Burundi, Rwanda. Now Ethiopia is doing it. Basically what it is instead of broadcasting your seed, you plant in a row. So simply by planting in a row, the productivity of the land has increased threefolds and fourfolds. This is so significant, for example, for an Ethiopian farmer. Mostly you get from 1 hectare of land probably 10 quintals of teff. 1 quintal of teff costs 1,000, let's say. So normally the farmer gets 10,000 birr. But if the productivity increases fourfold, it means 40,000 birr. That's significant. And it's working. Over 50,000 farmers in Ethiopia are involved in this. Another story is a story from Kenya. It's called sand dams. So they are putting dams where rainwater was flowing forcefully. So when you dam it, the soil is sandy soil, then the water stays there. And sand purifies water. So mostly, previously, women were having a huge problem with shortage of water. They have to walk kilometers to get water. And waterborne disease was rampant in that area. Because of sand damming, a simple technology, then they can get water just near to their household, and they increased productivity. And they could plant diverse crops and vegetables. And because of that, they could increase the nutritional content of their food, the food on the table. So we have collected close to 50 cases now from all over Africa, and this will continue. What's the commonality among all these cases? There is an enhanced social capacity, the capacity of women. Why is it that happening? It's not displacing the knowledge that they have. You know, knowledge accumulated over thousands of years. It's strengthening that knowledge. There is an increased income because they're not using their money to buy fertilizers or agrochemicals. And there is increase in productivity because of that. There is increase in income also. Then is a diversified healthy food. And there is also improved soil fertility because they are doing composting and manuring and you name it. But what's shocking for us is even if the Gates Foundation pumps a lot of money into agriculture, it's a peanut as we have seen it today as compared to the kind of money that they are putting in other sections. But it's a lot of money. Nonetheless, the Gates Foundation, the vision of Gates Foundation and other foundations allied to that does not support this kind of agriculture. There's no support or very minute support for agroecology. And the agroecology kind of agriculture and the kind of agriculture that we are promoting is becoming an international agenda. Now, quite recently, I think in September, there was a huge meeting at FAO level. So I see a clash between these two forms of agriculture. What works for us, for African women, for African youth, for African families, is agroecology, not the other vision. And at last, I will implore you to support organizations like AGRA-Watch and CAGJ. We work all in solidarity. Okay? So thanks again for coming.
Next, I'd like to introduce Mariam Mayet from the African Center for Biosafety in South Africa. She's the founder and executive director of the African Center for Biosafety, or the ACB. It's a nonprofit organization based in Johannesburg in South Africa. The ACB carries out research analysis, advocacy, and information sharing with key organizations in the network to foster and promote informed engagement with policies and informed and decision-making that control production, distribution, and access to food and resources. Ms. Mayet holds a BA and law degrees from the University of Witwatersrand and in South Africa.
So I want to say that I have come really to share with you our profound objection to the violence of the agrarian transformation taking place in Africa, funded by the Gates Foundation, your government, and many other governments linked to the old hub of capitalism like Germany, Italy, France. So your government is not unique in pushing the Green Revolution, nor is the Gates Foundation, but the Gates Foundation is what I call the kingpin. The kingpin who is in charge of the coordination of the various Green Revolution initiatives taking place in Africa. And I want to address you on two issues, particularly relating to what we've witnessed based on our research. The first is in relation to the criminalization, the displacing of our farmer-managed seed systems. And the second, I want to talk to you a little bit about the GM Banana project that the Gates is funding. Now, I want you to reimagine Africa as this a vibrant continent where farmers are in control of their seed systems, are proud of their knowledge systems, share seeds from generation to generation, oral tradition, self-reliant on a huge diversity of seeds under their control, where women play an important role in production decisions, seed selection and breeding, and where our local food economies find their roots. And then imagine displacement taking place by a very violent, aggressive green revolution project funded by, inter alia, the Gates Foundation. And coupled with that is a very close partnership between the Gates and around 80 African seed companies, which we believe will be the target for what I call corporate occupation by the big multinational companies. And we've already seen the beginnings of corporate control and concentration of our seed sector. Already Monsanto controls most of the hybrid maize market in southern Africa. And we can see that through the acquisition of South Africa's maize company, Penna, that Pioneer Hybrid will also make a lot of incursions into Africa. So we see and we fear a great deal of social dislocation, of collapse of our farming systems. We see in the future, and it's already happened, land grabs. You know, investment has become a euphemism for land grabs, dispossession, dislocation of our communities. And it's almost as if, and I don't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist or alarmist, but this is what's happening on the ground, where peasant farming systems, which have become reviled by the likes of Gates as being backward and responsible for poverty and starvation in Africa, it's almost as if there's a concerted effort to make these systems obsolete, do away with them. They're ugly, they're backward, they have to go, and they have to go now. We've already seen in the US and in industrialized agriculture countries like South Africa, where farmers have become completely divorced from production decisions, where these decisions are made in laboratories or in faraway boardrooms. And I think that we will see a very similar situation play itself out in Africa with catastrophic consequences, because 80% of our population live in rural areas. And about 70% of income is generated from agriculture. So what is going to happen when they empty out our rural areas? Where are all these people going to go? Because already what we've seen with Green Revolution projects is that they're aimed principally at about 2% of farmers, because it's a very expensive a technological package for farmers to buy into when we're talking about tens of millions of small-scale resource-poor farmers who cannot afford the high costs of inputs unless they're subsidized by our governments or your taxpayer money, and the money comes into the public purse and out to agribusiness to pay Monsanto and Syngenta for hybrid or improved seed, fertilizers, and pesticides. So that's really what Gates is funding. That's the agrarian vision. And that's what's being played out in Africa. So I want you to take home the message that there are Africans, farmer organizations that are outraged. We are angry because these decisions have been made, maybe here in Seattle or elsewhere, imposed on us in a very patronizing, patriarchal, violent way, like we're children, that they have designed a solution for us as to how they can fix up something that's broken. The second thing I want to address you on is this is Super Banana Project. Have you heard about that? It's a genetically engineered banana project funded by the Gates Foundation. And they have invested millions of dollars. And it's very similar to this golden rice that they've been trying to commercialize since the mid-80s, and it's gone nowhere after huge expenditure of money. And what I want you to also take home is that they've started feeding trials of the GM banana at Iowa State University on US citizens. And the idea is to commercially introduce this and grow it in Uganda and other countries in East Africa where where banana is a staple food. And what they're saying is that they will then enable Ugandans and other East Africans to access vitamin A, because it's genetically engineered to produce beta-carotene, which the body converts into vitamin A, as if a diverse diet won't give Africans the vitamin A they can get. So, I mean, Ugandans grow like 27 varieties or more of banana. So, I think that we're looking very much at this project as also a way to garner a lot of support from scientists who are involved in the project, who benefit from capacity building, dining and dancing, research funding, to pry open countries that are close to GM, like Uganda, to really capture the sought-after commercial markets of GM cotton and maize. So it's a kind of a Trojan horse. And so I'm going to leave it there.